Hi, it's Krista at The Secret Yarnery. Today we are making this gorgeous cozy cardi. This pattern is so easy to do. All it is double crochets. So good. You make a really big granny square and you join it together to make yourself some cute little sleeves, cute little cuff, cute little collar. I walk you through it step by step. So don't worry if you have not made a sweater before or you haven't got dabbled into the garments. Just follow along and I will be there right beside you step by step. To make this cozy cardi, I used 3 different colors of Savor from Ice Yarns. This is a 4-weight worsted acrylic, or a 10-ply if you are in Australia. For my whole sweater, I used a total of 750 grams of yarn. That is 26.46 ounces, or 1,236 meters, or 1,352 yards. That is for one color. If you are using 3 different colors like I am, then you will need 250 grams of each color, which is 8.82 ounces, or 412 meters, which is 451 yards. So that is for my size sweater, but if your size is larger than mine, you'll need a bit more. If it's smaller than mine, you need a bit less. So I suggest just getting 2 skeins of each of these yarns, and then you'll have enough for sure no matter what. I will be using a 6.5 millimeter crochet hook, but you could use a 6 millimeter if you don't have a 6.5. You'll also need a needle for sewing in your ends and a pair of scissors. And yes, if you'd like to follow along with a written pattern, they're available over on my website, secretyarnery.com. And you don't have to worry about being able to read a pattern. All of my patterns are written in plain English, just like I was sitting there right beside you. Here are the timestamps. You can jump back into where you left off, and let's get started. To make your cozy cardi, we're just going to start by making a magic ring. And if you are not comfortable making a magic ring, you can do a chain 3 ring. But if you're not comfortable doing the magic ring, I encourage you to just try it. It starts with a really nice center for our granny square, nice and tight, and all of our stitches have a chance to lay down side by side. So it's worth giving it a try. So to make your magic ring, put your tail over your non-dominant hand and just hold it down on your ring finger. Wrap it around your 2 fingers, making an X, and wrap it around the 3rd finger, just pinching it underneath your thumb. Flip your hand over and you'll have a short strand and a long strand. Grab your crochet hook, hook side facing down, and we're just going to slide it underneath the short strand, grabbing the long strand, bringing it under, pointing the hook towards ourselves, and pointing the hook away from us, but we're also going to be releasing our thumb a little bit so that that yarn can slide. Looping that long loop, and now you can pinch right underneath your hook just to hold that loop in place and bring that loop through. And there is your magic ring. And now we're going to chain 1. That doesn't count as anything for this pattern. It just gives us a little bit of height. And now into the center of our ring, we want to be working over that tail. We're going to do 15 double crochets. So 15 double crochets into the center of the ring, taking care to go over your tail, just like this. So you can pause the video and keep working along. 15 double crochets into the center of your ring, taking care to work over your tail. And I'll meet you when you have 15 double crochets. When you have your 15 double crochets, just remember your chain 1 doesn't count as anything. We're starting to count with our first real double crochet. So that is our first double crochet. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and just make sure you have 15. When you have your 15, just cinch that down. You don't have to make it super tight right now, but just cinch it down so everything's touching. And we are going to slip stitch to the top of that first real double crochet to join. I'm going to slip stitch right there. So slide your hook in and slip stitch to join. Chain 1 to secure your yarn, and cut your yarn, leaving a long enough tail to sew in later. Pull your hook up and your yarn through, and snug that down to secure. Now we want to flip it over, and now we can cinch this really, really shut. Nice and tight. And if you have done a chain 3, use your tail to sew it in. So just take your tail and use your tail to cinch it shut. And go ahead and sew in this tail. And now work your way forward. We want to go all the way around in the same direction as our yarn is coming from. So just continuing the direction. Just underneath those big fat stitches, but not coming out on the pretty side. So all the way around to where we started. And then backwards. So this is going to make sure that magic ring has no chance of coming out. And of course, a sharp tip needle really helps because it goes through your stitches, not around them. So these are linked in the description box down below if you want to get yourself some. They are a game changer for sure. So just bring that tail all the way around. And now you can cut off that center tail. And that finishes round 1. To start round 2, insert your hook into this stitch right after the join, the first real stitch that is not part of the join right there. Loop of your next color on your hook. Bring it through and slip stitch with both strands to join. And drop your tail, just holding along the back of your work. And chain 1. So this counts as your first stitch for this pattern, for this round. And make 1 more double crochet into that same stitch. Just like that. Chain 1, and into the next stitch, right here, we're going to start 2 double crochets. So we're going to start 2 double crochets, but we're going to finish them together. So just pop your hook in and start your first double crochet, but leave those last 2 loops on your hook. Wrap your yarn and start your second double crochet, but leave that last loop on your hook. So you'll have 3 loops on your hook. Grab your yarn, turn your hook towards yourself, and I pinch underneath that last stitch. That'll keep this stitch from cinching down and being hard to get your hook through. So just pinch it and pull your hook up to give yourself that space that you need. Grab your yarn, turn your hook towards yourself, and slide off all 3 loops, and chain 1. So we're going to do that into each stitch all the way around. So into the next stitch, start your first double crochet, but leave it on your hook. And start your second double crochet, leaving it on your hook. You'll have 3 strands. Wrap your yarn, pinch that last stitch, and take off all 3 loops. Chain 1. So you can pause the video and keep working around, starting 1 double crochet, starting your second double crochet, wrapping your yarn, taking off all 3 loops, and chaining 1 into each stitch all the way around, and I'll meet you when you get closer to our join. Are you enjoying crocheting along with me? Go ahead and subscribe to this channel under this video right now so you don't miss any more quick and easy tutorials just like this. Now when we get back to our join, we've made 14 of these DC2 togs, or these 2 double crochet cluster stitches. We have 14 of them. So we need to make 2 more. We want a total of 16. We're going to make our next one right before the join into that little stitch, and we're going to make our last one right after the join. That's going to help our center look nice and even. So wrap your yarn and into that little stitch before the join. Do your 2 double crochet cluster, or your DC2 tog. Chain 1, and into that little stitch after the join. It's the same stitch, we're just doing 2 clusters into it. So right here into that stitch, wrap your yarn and start your 2 double crochets. 1 and 2, and finish them together. And chain 1. Now you can see why we did that. So each of our clusters, it makes the center look nice and even. All of these are the same distance apart. Now we're going to slip stitch into this stitch right there, the top of our first cluster, right there to join. So slide your hook in and slip stitch to join. Chain 1 to secure your yarn. Cut your yarn, leaving a long enough tail to sew in with a needle later. Pull your hook up and your yarn through, and snug that down to secure. And that finishes round 2. To start round 3, slide your hook in to any space. It doesn't matter where you start. So just slide your hook into any space between those clusters. Loop of your next color on your hook. Bring it through and slip stitch with both strands to join. And drop your tail, just holding it along the back of your work. And chain 1. This counts as your first double crochet. Now into this space, we're going to start 3 double crochets but not finish them. So wrap your yarn and into that same space, start 1 double crochet, leaving it on your hook. Start your second double crochet, leaving it on your hook, and start your third double crochet and leave it on your hook. So that looks like we have 4 double crochets, including our starting chain. So pinch that last stitch we made to make it behave. Wrap your yarn, turn your hook, and take off all 4 loops and chain 2. 1 and 2. Into this next space, we're going to start 4 double crochets and finish them all together. So a DC4 tog into the next space. So wrap your yarn and start your first double crochet, leaving it on your hook. Start your second double crochet, leaving it on your hook. Your third, leaving it on your hook, and your fourth, leaving it on your hook. So now we'll have 5 loops on our hook. Grab that last stitch, wrap your yarn, turn your hook, and take off all 5 loops, and chain 2. 1 and 2. Into your next space, we're going to do the same thing. So this is what we're going to do for the whole round, is we're going to start our 4 double crochets into the space. 1, leaving those last loops on our hook. There's 2. There is 3. And here is number 4. Grabbing that last stitch we just made, wrapping our yarn and taking off all 5 loops and chaining 2. 1 and 2. So you can pause the video and keep working around. So we're going to do that all the way around. And when you get to where your tail is, bring your tail forward and work over it to make that cluster into this next space. So when you get to your tail, pull it forward and do your cluster right on top of it. We still have to sew it in with a needle later, but it just helps kind of give us some extra security over top of it. So pause the video and keep working around, and I will meet you when we get back to where we started. When you get back around to where we started, I've done my last cluster and my chain 2, and now we're going to slip stitch into the top of that cluster to join. Just this stitch right there at the top. We want to get underneath 2 strands of that stitch right there. So just pop your hook in, 2 strands on your hook, and slip stitch to join. Chain 1 to secure your yarn. Cut your yarn, leaving a long enough tail to sew in with a needle later. Pull your hook up and your yarn through and snug that down to secure. And that finishes round 3. To start round 4, we want to insert our hook into the 4th space before the join. So here is our join. We want to go with 3 empty ones. So 1, 2, 3, and here is number 4. So insert your hook into the 4th space before your join. That's just to cover up our tail with a corner when we get to it. Loop of your next color on your hook. Bring it through and slip stitch with both strands to join. Drop your tail, just holding it along the top edge of your work. And chain 3. 1, 2, and 3. So this counts as our first treble crochet, and into this very same space we're going to do 2 treble crochets. So there is 1 and 2, just like that. Now into our next space we are going to do we're going to do 3 double crochets. So 3 double crochets into the next space. There's 1 2, and 3. Three half double crochets into the next space. So that's taking off all 3 loops at once. So 3 half double crochets. And into the next space, we're going to do 3 double crochets. So we're just turning our circle into a square. So there's our 2 double crochets and 3. And here we are at our corner, at our tail. We're going to turn our tail into a corner. So bring that tail forward so we can work over it. Just like that. And we're going to do a corner into this space. So corners, wrap your yarn twice, 3 treble crochets, 1, 2, and 3, chain 2, 1 and 2, and 3 more treble crochets into that same space. If you need some more room in that corner, you can just slide your stitches back. We want all of our corner stitches to be laying down nice and flat, side by side. So wrap your yarn twice and 3 treble crochets to finish that corner. 1, 2, and 3. So that's what our corner looks like. Now into our next 3 spaces, we're going to do our sides. So 3 double crochets, 3 half double crochets, and 3 double crochets. So into the first space, 3 double crochets, 1, 2, and 3. Into the center space, 3 half double crochets, 1, 2, and 3. And into the next space, 3 double crochets, 1, 2, and 3. Now we're at our corner, so the next space we're going to turn into a corner. That is going to be 3 treble crochets, chain 2, and 3 treble crochets. So 1, 2, 3, chain 2, 1 and 2, wrap your yarn twice, and 3 more treble crochets into that same space. And remember, you can slide your stitches back if you need some more room. 3 treble crochets. 1, 2, and 3. And now into each of the next 3 spaces, 3 double crochets into the first, 3 half double crochets into the next, and 3 double crochets into the space after that. So our sides are always going to be 3 doubles, 3 half doubles, and 3 doubles. So starting in the first space of our side, 3 double crochets, 1, 2, and 3. Into the next space, 3 half double crochets. So that's us taking off all 3 loops. 1, 2, and 3. And into the last space of the side, 3 double crochets. 1, 2, and 3. And into the next space, we're going to do our corner. So same as our last corner, 3 treble crochets, chain 2, and 3 treble crochets. There's 1, 2, and 3. Chain 2, 1 and 2. Slide those stitches back if you need some more room, and 3 more treble crochets into that same space. 1, 2, and 3. Now we have our side left, so you can pause the video and just finish up this side. 3 double crochets, 3 half double crochets, and 3 double crochets, and I will meet you when we get back to where we started. When we get back to where we started, you can slide those stitches forward to give ourselves some more room in that corner space. And we're going to finish off that corner with 3 treble crochets. 1, 2, and 3. Chain 2, 1 and 2, and we're going to slip stitch to the top of that chain 3 to join, right there. So slip stitch into the top of that chain. Slide that onto your hook. You want 2 strands on the top of your hook. Slip stitch to join, and chain 1 to secure your yarn. Cut your yarn, leaving a long enough tail to sew in with a needle later. Pull your hook up and your yarn through, and snug that down to secure. And that finishes round 4. To start round 5, just pop your hook in to any corner space, just in the middle, into that chain space of your corner. Loop of your next color on your hook. Bring it through and slip stitch with both strands to join. And chain 2. 1 and 2. So this counts as our first double crochet. Wrap your yarn and into that same corner, 1 double crochet. Just like that. Now we're going to work into each stitch along this side, and our first stitch is the one we have to pay attention to. It's this guy right here, but it can easily be stuck underneath these stitches. So make sure you get into that very first stitch of the corner. So 1 double crochet into the first stitch, and 1 double crochet into each stitch all the way along. So we're working into the stitches now, turning our granny square into a solid granny square. So wrap your yarn and into the next stitch, 1 double crochet, and 1 double crochet into each stitch all the way along this side. So you can pause the video and keep working along. 1 double crochet into each stitch. Don't worry about our spaces. We're not doing spaces anymore. We are just doing stitches. So if you look at the top of your row, you'll see all of these pretty little V's. We're going to do 1 double crochet into each of those. So just the pretty stitches at the top. That's where we're looking for this row. So I pause the video and keep working ahead. 1 double crochet into each stitch, each of these pretty little V's at the top, and I will meet you when we get to our corner. When you get to your corner, and if you have your tail, or whenever you do get to your tail, just bring it forward so we can work over it underneath those stitches. So into your corner space, we're going to do 2 double crochets, chain 2, and 2 double crochets. So there's 1, 2, chain 2, 1 and 2, and into the same space, 2 double crochets. 1 and 2. Now, But this is our join, or this is where I joined. So we have our chain here. So it'll depend whenever you get to your chain. Your chain is a stitch. And the easiest spot for me to work into my chain, I just always look for this little hole right there. You can see that little hole? I turn that into the stitch. So I'm going to do my 1 double crochet into this stitch right here. And I'm going to do my 2nd double crochet into this stitch here. So I'm going to pick up this loop at the front, and I'm going to grab that loop at the back, and that is my pretty little V, but I'm going to make it into a V by putting a stitch there. So our first stitch into this cute little hole at the top of our chain, and the second stitch right here, front loop that hangs down a little bit, and that back loop. So wrap your yarn and into the chain, 1 double crochet, wrap your yarn and into the next stitch, which is that lazy loop at the front and our loop at the back. We're going to make that into our next stitch right there. So wrap your yarn under both of those strands, 1 double crochet, and now 1 double crochet into each stitch all the way along our side. And just remember to be looking at the top of our V's for this round. We're just looking at the top of those V's, 1 double crochet into each stitch all the way along, and I'll meet you when we get to our corner. When you get to your corner, we'll do our corner into that corner space. So 2 double crochets, chain 2, and 2 double crochets into the corner space. So there is 1 and 2, chain 2, 1 and 2, and rotate your work. Now into the same space, we're going to finish off that corner with our 2 double crochets. 1 and 2. Just like that. Now remember to go into our first stitch. It could be hiding underneath our corner stitches. So just line your needle up with that first double crochet of the side, and make sure you get into that first stitch. Just always look for that first stitch. This stitch is going to help our sweater feel nice and relaxed and not too tight. So now I can pause the video and keep working along. 1 double crochet into each of the V stitches along the side. Corners, 2 double crochets, chain 2, and 2 double crochets. Make sure you get into that first stitch right after your corner, and 1 double crochet into each stitch along the last side, and I'll meet you when you get back down to where we started. When you get back to where we started, into that corner space, 2 double crochets, 1 and 2, chain 2, 1 and 2, and we're going to slip stitch to the top of that chain to join. I'm going to slip stitch right there. So just pop your hook in and slip stitch to join. Chain 1 to secure your yarn. Cut your yarn, leaving a long enough tail to sew in with a needle later. Pull your hook up and your yarn through and snug that down to secure. And that finishes round 5. To start round 6, I'm just going to start in the corner before. So wherever I joined, I'm going to always be joining just in the corner before, just so I don't have too many tails in the same corner. It just gives a little bit of order to things. So into that corner before our last join, just slide your hook into that space. Loop of yarn on your hook, bring it through and slip stitch with both strands to join. Drop your tail just holding it along the top edge of your work, and chain 2, 1 and 2. Now this is the repeat for growing our sweater to be the size we want it to be. So this is the row we're going to repeat over and over until our granny square is the right size for our sweater. So wrap your yarn and 1 more double crochet into that same corner space. And now 1 double crochet into each stitch along the side. Make sure you find that very first double crochet. So wrap your yarn and into that first double crochet after the corner, 1 double crochet, and 1 double crochet into each stitch all the way along the side. 1 double crochet into each stitch, just like that. So you can pause the video and keep working along. 1 double crochet into each stitch all the way along the top of your square, and I'll meet you when we get to our first corner. When we get to the first corner, bring your tail forward so we can work over it in that corner space, or bring your tail back, I suppose. Wrap your yarn, and into that corner space, we're going to do a corner. Corners, 2 double crochets, chain 2, and 2 double crochets. So there's 1 and 2, chain 2, 1 and 2, and into that same corner space, 2 more double crochets. 1 and 2. Now we're at our chain and our lazy stitch. Can you see that? So our chain, we're going to put our stitch right into that hole. See that hole there? That's where we're going to put our stitch, into that hole. And then the stitch after, we have this lazy loop in front and that normal loop at the back. So we're going to pinch those together for our second stitch. So our first double crochet goes into this hole, into the chain. Double crochet. And our second stitch, we're going to pick up that front loop and match it up with our back loop. So underneath the lazy loop and picking up the back loop, 1 double crochet. Now the rest of your stitches for your whole round are going to look the exact same. They're going to look normal. So now 1 double crochet into each stitch all the way along the side, and our corners are 2 double crochets, chain 2, and 2 double crochets. So you can pause the video and keep working all the way around your square. 1 double crochet into each stitch along the side. Corners, 2 double crochets, chain 2, and 2 double crochets. Make sure you get into that stitch right after our corner all the way around, and I'll meet you when we get back to where we started. When you get back to where we started, 2 double crochets into that corner space. 1 and 2, chain 2, 1 and 2, and we're going to slip stitch to the top of that chain to join. So going to slip stitch to the top of the chain, 2 strands of that chain on the top of our hook. Just like that, slip stitch, chain 1 to secure your yarn, cut your yarn, leaving a long enough tail to sew in with a needle later. Pull your hook up and your yarn through and snug that down to secure. So now pause the video and keep working around, just repeating this row over and over until your granny square is the size you want it to be for your cardigan. When you think that your cozy cardi is the size you want, fold it in half. So we have our cute flower in the middle, and just fold it in half. Then along the sides, just tuck your first corners together with some stitch markers just into that corner space of both pieces, both sides, and then just tack it together all the way up, leaving a spot for your arm to come out up by this center bit up here. It doesn't matter. You don't have to line up your stitches. You don't have to count it. It's literally just for trying on. So when you think it is the size you want, fold it in half, close up your side, leaving the center bit open for your arm, and do the same thing on the other side, just leaving a spot for your hand. It doesn't matter if they are the same size. It's literally just for trying on. So hold it shut with some stitch markers, and then let's try it on. So this is what size mine is. It could be 3 rows longer or wider or bigger. So now what we're going to do with our stitch markers, Now we are going to line them up exactly all the way along, and we're going to leave a spot open, but we're going to make sure we know exactly how many stitches we're going to leave open for our sleeve. So now we're going to be a little bit particular about it. It might be handy to get a whole bunch of stitch markers, and then we'll just put a stitch marker into both stitches every 3 or 4 stitches all the way up, just so we know everything is lined up by the time we get to our armhole, our little sleeve up here. So starting in this corner, just into that space, into the corner space of both sides, 1 stitch marker. And now I'm going to line them up. So there's my first stitch, second, third, 4, all the way up. I'm just going to pinch them so they line up. And every once in a while, I'm going to pop a stitch marker into both sides, just like that, so I know that that is lined up right there. And I'm going to keep lining it up all the way up to my armhole. You can, of course, count if you like to count. Welcome to do that as well. So there I'm all pinched together with my stitches lining up until my armhole. And now this is where we want to count our stitches. We want to make sure we have the same number of empty stitches for our sleeve up here. Now for your armhole, you can decide how big or wide you want it to be. If you want it to be a little bit smaller, or if you want it to be nice and big. I think I'm going to leave about 26 stitches for mine. I just want my hand to be able to fit in nicely without pulling anything, but I also don't want it to be too big. Not too big, not too small, just right for your hand. So mine is going to be right there. And now we can just count how many stitches are going to be open. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22. So I have 23 stitches for my opening. So I just want to write that number down so I can do the same for the other side. And now into that stitch, we're going to put 1 stitch marker into each side of our sleeve. So there's 1 on this side. And we don't need them along the side anymore. That was just to help us get up there, help us count. So I'm going to pop that out and make sure I have 1 in each side. And then I can take out that joining one. Because now we're going to do continuous join as you go for joining. So pop out the stitch markers from this side and make your second side match. So go to your other side of your sweater and mark out your final 23 stitches or whatever size you want to make your sleeve. It is totally fine. So there is my sleeve up here at the top. So now we're going to start in this corner here. So our folded corner, our stitch markers for our armhole are coming up, and we're starting in that corner right before. So grab your hook and grab your yarn, whatever your next color would be, or the same color if you're not changing colors. Slip stitch with both strands to join in that corner space, and then just keep working along like we have been. So chain 2 for your first double crochet, and we can work over our tail a couple stitches. So 1 more double crochet into the corner, and 1 double crochet into each stitch, all the way up and along until we get to our second stitch marker. So now you can pause the video and keep working along, 1 double crochet into each stitch, just like we were doing for our whole sweater, just like that, all the way along, and I'll meet you when you get to your stitch marker. So when you get to your first stitch marker, so my second one is over here, when you get to your first stitch marker, we're not going to do anything special yet. So I'm just going to work right into that very same stitch and make your double crochet. And now move your stitch marker up to that stitch we just did. So the stitch into the stitch with a stitch marker gets the new stitch marker. We're just moving it up 1 row. And now pause the video and keep working along again until you get to your second stitch marker, and that is where all the fun will begin. So now double crochet into that stitch where my stitch marker was, and I took my stitch marker out. Now fold your sweater in half and just fold this top edge down so we can get to our stitch marker. just like that. So we're going to be joining this side here while we finish the row right here on this side. So this is where my stitch marker was. I thought it was filming, but I wasn't. My stitch marker was right there, so I just popped it up, and it is this stitch here. So this gray stitch matches the gray stitch with the stitch marker on this side. That guy right there. So I'm going to leave that stitch marker in just in case I have to answer the phone or do anything. You want to really make sure that you know exactly what stitch you are working into. And I'm just going to go into that stitch, just down into that stitch, bring my yarn back up and through, and turn my hook to make a little slip stitch. So there is our very first join of our sweater. It's officially turning into a sweater. Now 1 double crochet into the next stitch and 1 slip stitch into the stitch up above. So I think of it as making little letter I's, just like that. So I make my I, so the post, my double crochet, that's my letter I, and then you have to punctuate. So into that next stitch, down into the stitch, bring it up and slip stitch. So wrap your yarn into the next stitch, you do your letter I, and into the next stitch up above, do your slip stitch to punctuate. So letter I, dot, letter I, dot, letter I, dot. That's what we're going to be doing all the way down along this side of our cardigan or our sweater. So 1 double crochet into the stitch and 1 slip stitch into the next stitch up above. And you always want to be working the same way into your stitches. So you just do your double crochet like usual, but when you are doing your slip stitch, I'll just always go down into that stitch. Down into the stitch and slip stitch. So double crochet into the side we are working on. Hold your work down towards yourself so you can see that next stitch. You don't want to be holding your work up because then it looks like our next stitch is right there, but we would have missed that guy. So always bring your hook down and look for that next stitch. So I'm going to slip stitch right there and double crochet into where we are working and slip stitch into where we have finished. Just like that. So you can pause the video and keep working along this side, and I will meet you when we get to the end of our row. Now when you get to the end, it can often look like you have way too many stitches you're working on, like nothing's going to be lining up when you get to the end, but just keep having faith and keep working at it. It's gonna work out. So don't give up until you get back, like until you know that your stitch count is off, because it's happened to me many times where I panic, I undo my stitches thinking my stitch count is off, and in fact it wasn't. So just make sure you get all the way to the end before you cry about your stitch count being off. See, suddenly, right at the end, it all makes sense. But until then, it's really easy to second guess yourself. So now I'm into the corner space, right there. So we're going to do our normal 2 double crochets into the corner space, and we're also going to do our normal punctuation or slip stitching to join. So there's 1 and 2, and this is where I joined my yarn. So I'm just going to slip stitch into the top of that chain, a little slip stitch, and chain 1 for my corner. Now rotate your work. And now work all the way along this bottom edge, all the way along until you get to your next sleeve. Then we're going to go all the way up the sleeve, just like we did right now, all the way past our first stitch marker to our second stitch marker, and then we're going to start joining, just like we did. So keep working your way around, and I will see you when you get to the next corner, or the next join over here. So we've joined the one side. You might want your armhole a little bigger than mine. And I've gone all the way around and up on the other side, the other sleeve, past the first stitch marker, and I am almost at the second stitch marker. So we're going to do the same thing on this side. So into the same stitch as that stitch marker. So the stitch marker marks our first stitch where we are joining. So you can take that one out now and fold your sweater in half again. Just lining up that edge we're going to be working on like that. And then get your top edge, the side we've finished, just fold it down a little bit so those stitches are ready for us. And we're going to go into that stitch with the stitch marker. So into that stitch, we're going to do our very first slip stitch on this side. So there is our first slip stitch. And now one double crochet into the side we are working on and one slip stitch into the next stitch up above, always remembering that we need to move our hook down so we can see that next stitch. So one double crochet into the side you're joining, and move your hook out of the way, and one slip stitch into the row we have finished, or that row above us. So you can pause the video and keep working all along, and I will meet you when we are at the bottom of our row. So that is how we're going to do the joining. When you get to the bottom, we're going to do it the exact same as we did before. Same as the other side of our sweater, just join it up and then keep going to meet up where we started right over here. When you get to your corner, we're just going to do the same thing. So 2 double crochets into the corner space, and we're going to dot those eyes into those stitches up there. So into your corner space, 1 double crochet, move your hook back to see that next stitch right there, so slip stitch, and 1 more double crochet into the corner we are working on. And now you can go into the stitch or into the space. I'm going to go into the space just to make sure we're in that space, and chain 1. That's also a good spot where if you have an extra stitch, it's perfect like that. So now rotate your work a little bit, and now we can just work along the last side or the last edge of our sweater. So now you can pause the video and just keep working along. Your corner is 2 double crochets to finish that corner space, and 1 double crochet into each stitch all the way along, just like we have been doing. So you can pause the video, keep working along, and I will meet you when we get back to where we started. When you get back to where we started, 2 double crochets into that corner space, just like usual. 1 and 2, chain 2, 1 and 2, and we're going to slip stitch over here into this opposite corner, right over there. So slip stitch to join, and chain 2, 1 and 2. And 1 double crochet into that same space. Just like that. And now 1 double crochet into each stitch all the way around, starting with that very first stitch. So 1 double crochet into each stitch. So you can pause the video and keep working all the way around. I will meet you when we get to this join right here. When you get closer to your join, just go into every stitch until you get there. So there is our last double crochet into the last stitch. Now into our spaces, 1 double crochet into the first space. Then we're going to start our second double crochet, but leave those last 2 loops on your hook. And into the second space after the join, right over here, we're going to start our second double crochet. So 3 loops on our hook, wrap your yarn and take off all 3 loops together, and 1 more double crochet into that same space. So that evens out our stitch count to match what we need for this join area. And now into each stitch, including that very first one, 1 double crochet into each stitch. Into that very first one is our first stitch, And now pause the video and keep working around, 1 double crochet into each stitch. And I'll meet you when we get back to where we started. When you get back to where you started, into this corner space before the join, you're going to start your double crochet but leave it on your hook. And you're going to start a second double crochet and leave it on your hook, so you have your 3 strands, and then wrap your yarn and take off all 3 strands. So that just fills up our corner so it looks nice when we join it. And now we're going to slip stitch right to the top of that first real double crochet after the join. So we're going to slip stitch right there. Just like that. Chain 1 to secure your yarn. Cut your yarn, leaving a long enough tail to sew in later. Pull your hook up and your yarn through and snug that down to secure. And now we are done with our joining. So get yourself situated. We are going to be joining into this second stitch. So skipping the stitch before the join, going into the second stitch before the join, right there. I'm going to join into that stitch. So grab a loop of your yarn, the same color, bring it through, slip stitch with both strands to join, drop your tail, you can hold it along your work for a couple stitches, and chain 2. 1 and 2. Into the next stitch, right there, 1 double crochet. Now I'm going to drop my tail so I can work it in with a needle later. Now looking at our join, we have this space before our join, but our real next stitch is right over on this side. But we're going to start a double crochet into this space. So into this space, I'm going to start a double crochet just to fill in our join. So leaving those last 2 loops on your hook. And now into the stitch right after, starting a second double crochet. So 3 loops on your hook. Wrap and take off all 3 loops. And now 1 double crochet into each stitch all the way around. So super easy. You can pause the video and keep working around, 1 double crochet into each stitch, and I will meet you when we get back to where we started. When we get back to our join, we're just going to slip stitch to the top of that chain, just like we normally would. So 2 strands of that chain on the top of your hook. Pop your hook in and slip stitch to join. Chain 1 to secure your yarn. Cut your yarn, leaving a long enough tail to sew in later. Pull your hook up and your yarn through and snug that down to secure. So now our sleeve matches our collar. Now to start the next row, I'm going to start in this stitch down here. So that is our 2 double crochet together. We're just going to hide as many joins as we can on the underside of our cuff. So just pop your hook in, your next color on your hook, and slip stitch with both strands to join. Drop your tail. You can just hold it along the back of your work and chain 1. Into that very same stitch, 1 double crochet. So that counts as our first 2 double crochets together, and chain 1. Skip 1, so we're going to skip this stitch here, and we're going to work into the second and do another DC 2 tog, or 2 double crochets together. So start your first double crochet, leaving it on your hook. Start your second double crochet into that same stitch. So you have 3 loops on your hook, wrap and take off all 3 loops, and chain 1. So skipping a stitch and working in to the second, we're going to do the same thing. So starting 2 double crochets and finishing them together. So there is 1, start your second, so 3 loops on your hook, wrap and take off all 3 loops, and chain 1. So we're going to do that into the second stitch all the way around our cuff. So starting 1 double crochet, starting a second double crochet, wrapping your yarn and finishing those together, chaining one and skipping one. So into the second stitch, we're going to do the same thing, DC 2 tog. So starting 2 double crochets into the same stitch, finishing them together, chaining one and skipping one. So you can pause the video and keep working along, and I will meet you when we get back to where we started. When you get back to your join, we are going to make another cluster into our chain just so that it evens out. We don't want to have a big gap on this side. So into that chain, do your last cluster just to fill it in. Just like that. Chain one, and we're going to slip stitch to the top of that first real double crochet to join. So we're going to slip stitch right there. Slip stitch to join. Chain one and cut your yarn. Pull your hook up and your yarn through and snug that down to secure. To start the next color, we're just going to put our hook in to any of these spaces. Not exactly where we joined the last color, but I'm going to go one space before. Just right there. And loop of your new color on your hook. Bring it through and slip stitch with both strands to join. Drop your tail, just holding it along the back of your work, and chain one. Into that same space, we are going to start 2 double crochets, leaving them on our hook. So there is 1, and here is 2. So 3 loops for this stitch. Wrap and take off all 3 loops and chain 1. Into the next space, we're going to start 3 double crochets into the next space. So 1, 2, and 3. So you'll have 4 loops on your hook. Wrap and take off all 4 loops and chain 1. So that is what we're going to do into each space all the way around our cuff. And you can work over your last tail into the space, just holding it along with your work. So starting 3 double crochets, or a DC 3 tog. So there is 1, there is 2, and there is 3. Wrap and take off all 4 loops and chain 1. Into the next space, start your first double crochet, start your second double crochet, and start your third double crochet. So 4 loops on your hook, wrap and take off all 4 loops and chain 1. So you can pause the video and keep working around, starting 3 double crochets and finishing them together and doing a chain 1 into each space all the way around, and I will meet you when we get back to where we started. When you get back to where we joined, we are going to slip stitch right into the top of this very first double crochet we made. It looks like the top of the chain 3, but it is the top of that first double crochet, the top of that first cluster. So just slide your hook in and slip stitch to join. Chain 1. That counts as our first single crochet. And into the next stitch, right there, we're going to do 1 single crochet. And 1 single crochet into each stitch all the way around our cuff, just to finish it off. Now into the space, we're going to do 1 single crochet. And into the stitch, 1 single crochet. So we're going to be working into this space there, this stitch. If you wiggle your finger, you can see that little triangle right there. So into the little triangle, that little stitch, 1 single crochet, into the space, 1 single crochet, and into the little triangle stitch right there, 1 single crochet. So we're going to do this all the way around our cuff just to finish it off. So into the space, 1 single crochet, and into the stitch, 1 single crochet. So you can pause the video and keep working around, and I will meet you, get my stitch in there, I will meet you when we get back to where we started. When we get back to where we started, you can slip stitch to join, but what I want to encourage you to do is an invisible join, and don't panic, it is super easy to do. But what you want to do is cut your yarn, and you can leave a long enough tail. You don't have to make it too tiny. And we've just finished our last single crochet. Just there. So slide your hook up and your yarn through that last stitch we made before joining or anything like that. That's our last single crochet. And thread your needle. If you are using a sharp tip needle, you can start just by using the eye end. So we're going to go in to the very first chain we made. That little guy right there, that counted as our first single crochet. And see how we're going underneath both strands of that stitch, just like we would be if we were crocheting. If this was our crochet hook, we're going in the same way with our needle. So just bring it through. Don't snug it down too much. We want to keep an eye on where it's coming from. That stitch right there, keep an eye on it. And you don't have to worry about it looking like a stitch right now. The most important thing is looking where your yarn is coming from. Now put your needle back down into the center of that stitch, just underneath the one loop, back down where it came from. So now we have 2 strands coming in and out of that stitch, and now you can shrink it down until it looks like a stitch. There, just like that. Right? Now you can go ahead, use the sharp end of your needle. I'm actually going to switch to a sharp tip needle because I like them so much better. And now from the inside of your cuff or the inside of your sleeve, I'm just going to sew that tail down into the fat part of the same color and then finish sewing it in. But you want to make sure you don't pull that too tight. You always want that to stay nice, looking like a regular stitch. Might already be too tight. And go ahead and sew in your tail. And now repeat this on the other sleeve. So now when both of your sleeves are done, and now we can just sew in our tails, and we're finished. So I'd like to join my yarn anywhere around our join area, just because I know it's not going to be around my neck. It's not going to be at the back of my neck or by my face. It's going to be down somewhere by my hands, no matter which way I put my sweater on. So I'm just going to pick a stitch, any which one, just near the join area, and pop your hook in. Loop of your color on your hook, your next color. Bring it through and slip stitch with both strands to join. Drop your tail. You can hold it along the edge of your work. We can work over it for this first cluster, or this first stitch, I suppose, and chain 1. Now into that very same stitch, 1 double crochet, chain 1, skip 1, and into the second, we're going to start our 2 double crochets. So start your first double crochet, leaving it on your hook. Start your second double crochet into that same stitch. 3 loops on your hook, wrap your yarn, and take off all 3 loops, and chain 1. So you can pause the video now, skipping a stitch, and into the second, starting 2 double crochets, but leaving them on your hook. So you have your 3 loops, wrapping and taking off all 3 loops and chaining 1. So we're going to do that into the second stitch all the way around the collar of our sweater, and I'll meet you when we get back to where we started. When you get back to where we started, we are going to slip stitch into the top of that first real double crochet to join, just the top of that stitch. So slide your hook in and slip stitch to join. Chain 1 to secure your yarn. Cut your yarn, leaving a long enough tail to sew in with a needle later. Pull your hook up and your yarn through and snug that down to secure. And now we are ready to start the next color, the next row. So grab a loop of your next color and just pop your hook in to a different spot, a space before or a space after. Loop of yarn on your hook, bring it through and slip stitch with both strands to join. Drop your tail, just holding along the back of your work, and chain 1 and start 2 double crochets. So there is our first double crochet, and there is our second. So 3 loops on our hook for this first stitch. Wrap and take off all 3 loops and chain 1. Now into this next space, starting 3 double crochets. So same as we did for our cuffs. There is 1, 2, and 3. So now we're having 4 loops on our hook. Wrap and take off all 4 loops and chain 1. So you can pause the video and keep working ahead, starting 3 double crochets into each space, finishing them together and chaining 1. So you can pause the video and keep working along. 3 double crochets together into the space with a chain 1 into each space all the way along. And I will meet you when we get back to where we started. When you get back to where we started, we are going to slip stitch right into that first, or to the top of that first cluster. We're just going to slip stitch right into that stitch right there. 1 slip stitch, chain 1, and now we're going to turn our work. We're going to do our single crochets into the back side of our work, and that's going to help the curl stop curling. There we go, just like that. Now into this space, 1 single crochet, 1 single crochet into the stitch, and 1 single crochet into the space. So into the stitch and into the space, all the way around our collar. So you can pause the video and keep working around. 1 single crochet into the space, 1 single crochet into the stitch, all the way around, and I'll meet you when we get back to where we started. When we get back to where we joined, I'm going to do an invisible join to finish up this round, just because it's the edge of a sweater, it's a wearable, but if you wanted to do a slip stitch to join in a chain 1, you could. So into this stitch at the top of our cluster, that guy there, that is where I'm going to do my last single crochet, and I'm going to go ahead and cut my yarn. Pull your hook up and your yarn through that last stitch. Just like that. That's our last single crochet. Thread your needle, and using the blunt end or the eye of your needle or the blunt tip needle, but I'm just going to use the eye of a sharp tip. And we're going to into this very first single crochet right over there. The first real one, because we want it to look just great. So keeping an eye on where it's coming from, that stitch right there. Before we pull it down too much, see, that's our loop right there. So before we pull it down too much, I'm going to go back down into that same stitch, just under that 1 loop from where the yarn came from. So now I have a big stitch. Now we're just going to shrink it down enough for it to look like a regular stitch. Just like that. So easy. And now we can just sew in our tails and we're finished. So I hope you enjoyed making your cardigan as much as I enjoyed making mine. I'm waiting for you in that video right there, and stay hooked.